Hello, and welcome to our Tween and Teen Kitchen Kit demo with the Public Library of Brookline. My name is Robin, and I'm a teen librarian at the Brookline Village Library. I'm here today to show you all how to make your own bubble tea. Is this your first Public Library of Brookline to Go program? Here's how it works. Each month, the library is offering new take-home program kits, complete with everything you need to follow along and video or written instructions created by one of your local librarians. The best part? Absolutely no due dates. You can keep everything included in your kit. Visit brklib.com to go for a full list of our current kit offerings, and follow the link to find out about all of our kits, free to pick up at any library location. Now let's get cooking. For this kitchen kit, you'll need some of the kit supplies as well as some things from home. You'll need a pot with a lid on it. You'll need measuring cups. You'll need a sealable airtight container. You'll need your powdered drink mix. In this case, I'm using the coconut one. You'll need your bubbles, your tapioca bubbles for the bubble tea. And we've given you 4 different tea bags. And you'll need some sugar. In this case, I'm using brown sugar. You'll need your own glass, but we are giving you the bubble tea straws to make sure that you have the full bubble tea experience. You also need a measuring scoop. In this case, a 1/4 cup. The first step you'll need to do is to cook your tapioca bubbles. Add 4 cups of water to your pot, and make sure you leave enough room in the pot so that it can boil. So make sure that you have a pot that's significantly bigger than the water that you're adding. And then you turn on the heat on high and bring the water to a boil. Once you've got the water at a rolling boil, which you can see here, you'll want to add your tapioca bubbles to the boiling water. And you can just take the bag and empty it out into the boiling water. And make sure to stir it gently so that the bubbles don't stick to the bottom of your pot, and to make sure that they separate a little bit in the water and don't stick together. And you want to make sure to wait a little bit to see that the bubbles are going to rise to the surface of the water. And then once you see them on the surface, you can cover the pot with your lid and keep it boiling for 15 minutes. You can stir it every 5 minutes or so to make sure that the bubbles aren't sticking to each other, but you want to make sure to boil it for 15 minutes total. And then once it's cooked, you want to take the pot and move it off of the heat, so off of the burner. And be careful, make sure you use some oven mitts or something to make sure to protect your hands. And then just turn off the burner and let it all sit for 15 more minutes. You want the bubbles to soak in the hot water for 15 minutes. So while your bubbles are steeping, then you're going to want to make some simple syrup so that you can store the bubbles. In this case, I'm using a 1/4 cup of brown sugar, and then you just add a 1/4 cup of water. It should be lukewarm, not cold, but it doesn't have to be hot. I'm adding this to an airtight container. It's a very easy way to make simple syrup. Just add an equal amount of water and sugar, and then you seal the container and you shake it. And then once you've shaken it, you can make sure that the sugar gets completely dissolved in the water, and that'll make a syrup that you can store your bubbles in. And you can check it a few times to make sure that it's actually dissolved. And then for the next step, you're going to want to move your pot into the sink, and remember that it'll be hot, so make sure to use some oven mitts And then you're just going to add cool water into the pot so that you can cool down the bubbles so that they're no longer cooking. And you just want to make sure you don't let it overflow and you lose your bubbles into the sink. But if you're careful, you can slowly tip the pot and drain out the hot water while adding in more cool water. And that will slowly cool down all the bubbles. And I just made sure to wash my hands and go through and mix the bubbles a little bit so that you can make sure that they're separating. And then once it gets down to the point that it's very cool, more like room temperature, then you just get a sieve or a colander, something that you can use to strain the water through. And then you just want to pour the water and the bubbles through the strainer in order to get the bubbles out. You can do this with just a pot lid. If you keep a pot lid closed and leave a small gap, you can drain the water that way. If you have a strainer, it's usually easier to do it this way. So make sure you've got your container of simple syrup, and then you just want to add your bubbles to the container for storage. And you can store the bubbles for a few days this way in the simple syrup, but they don't really last much longer than that. So that's why you always want to make your bubbles fresh and serve them quickly. Just make sure that the container is airtight because you want to make sure that nothing gets in there with the sugar and the bubbles. And then finally, when you want to actually make your bubble tea, you need to decide what kind of drink you want to make. So in this case, I decided to use the coconut powder that we've included with the kit. And for the powders, they tend to dissolve better in hot water. So I'm adding the powder to a heat-safe cup here. This is a cup measure for liquids. So just add about ½ a cup of boiling water, and then stir the coconut powder into the water and make sure that it dissolves completely. In this case with the coconut, there'll be little bits of coconut in the powder, so that will be visible, but you want to make sure the powder actually dissolves. And of course this will be hot, so you want to let it cool down to room temperature, or once it's cooled down to room temperature, you can also put it directly into your refrigerator to chill. And then I also decided I wanted tea in my bubble tea, so I just steeped a cup of black tea here. And you'll have black tea and jasmine tea to choose from in your kit. And I just added the boiling water and steeped my tea for about 4 minutes, which is usual for a black tea. And then once it was steeped, you take the tea bag out and again let it cool down to room temperature, or once it's at room temperature, you can chill it. The one thing to remember about chilling anything is make sure that the actual cup that it's in is going to be safe in the fridge, and don't move a hot mug directly into the fridge or else it might break. Finally, you want to put together your complete bubble tea. So get your glass, and then you want to get your bubbles, and they're in the sugar syrup. And when I scoop out the bubbles, I make sure to keep some of the syrup, but not too much because it is pretty sweet. That is very much a matter of taste. And I put about 3 teaspoons of bubbles in the bottom of this glass for my bubble tea. Well, it depends on how many bubbles you actually like in your tea. And then I put the mixture of the coconut and the tea into my glass. And this has been chilled, so I didn't bother to add ice, but you can also add ice. And then I've got my bubble tea straw, and you can see the bubbles settle to the bottom of the glass. But you're all set. There's your bubble tea. And you can try all the flavors we've included and do some experiments with tea or coffee and other types of flavors. Enjoy! Thank you all so much for cooking with us today. We would love to see what you made with your kit, so please feel free to share your project with us on social media using the hashtag BRK LIB to go. The Tween and Teen Kit program is generously sponsored by the library trustees and the Friends of the Brookline Public Library.